Good morning and good afternoon, depending on where in the world you're joining us from. And today I would like to talk about cyber safety. But it's worthwhile highlighting some key differences between a security first and a safety first cybersecurity approach. And I'll start with security first. And it stems from discussions that I've had over the last year within the industry with captains, ETOs, engineers, managers and owners teams when I've asked about IMO 2021 and the cyber risk management guidelines. What are you doing and what have you done to prepare yourselves? A common response that I have received has linked straight back to the owner, their family or their guests or even charter guests and their own cybersecurity, the data, the finances themselves, the privacy and the protection and defenses of those aspects. And I think it is very easy in our industry to talk about IMO 2021 and talk about the owner and their cybersecurity. So when then I've gone on to explain why a security first approach centered around the owner doesn't meet the requirements of the Maritime Cyber Risk Management Guidelines, the next most common question I get asked is, so does that mean we need to do a penetration test? And I think what I'd like to debunk is that the answer is no. If you are yet to see, in version 4 of BIMCO's cybersecurity guidelines that were launched just before Christmas, it says, and I quote, penetration testing is intrusive, carries more risk, is largely more expensive, and requires an understanding of networks and inventoried assets. Penetration testing should be reserved for more specific circumstances and technical action. I'm a big fan of what penetration tests have to offer. There are a number of benefits, whether you're trying to ascertain specific threat vectors to a particular owner, hacker groups or bad actors that may be a potential threat against them, and trying to gain access to their data or their finances through IT systems. But would a penetration test help identify weaknesses in payment controls or in a procedure to update the navigation equipment or even identify a lack of crew cyber awareness? That is why I commend the industry guidelines for aligning themselves with the NIST cybersecurity framework and closely matching the existing onboard culture of assessing risk by putting safety first. Cyber risks may not be physical risks and visible to the human eye, and it's difficult to fully understand and comprehend them without potential high-profile events, which I hope the industry does end up avoiding, but there's therefore nothing to really learn from. But in my personal opinion, I think it's just a matter of time. And there are a number of industry reports and rumors of invoice payments ending up in the wrong bank account, as Corey mentioned, or a remote update impacting a vessel system when maneuvering in port. The truth is the industry does have a gap. No yacht is exempt. No yacht has not had any risks on their IT or OT systems, or at least ones that we've worked with. And it's the risk-led approach and really harnessing the 5 principles of the NIST cybersecurity framework, identify, detect, protect, respond, recover, that really help vessels and their crew meet the aims and objectives of the cybersecurity resolution. Whether that's identifying your assets and the threats and the risks that are there, protection measures and going beyond just the surface, but whether it's through a crew familiarization or an introductory video to explain the subject, but going further than that and challenging knowledge, ensuring that the human risk is lowered, running drills like you do for ISPS, and beyond protection, moving on to detect, making sure you have the ability to monitor and detect anomalous events or malicious attacks. And I think the largest gap that we've seen is in response and recover. And even though the SMS is very much geared to include that type of documentation, the detail and the effectiveness of the response and recovery plans so far have been lacking and have required external assistance. So the safety first approach includes not just the technology, and I think that's another key differentiator. It also includes the processes and the people, and therefore the crew. And it's this approach that is consistent throughout the industry guidelines to meet the functional requirements of the RSM code. A security-first approach centered around the owner does not achieve the same outcomes in the form of a cyber risk management plan. During a cyber risk assessment, both the IT and OT systems are assessed to identify and mitigate risks that, if subject to a cyber event, could pose a significant threat to the safety of guests and crew and the vessel and the environment. Whether that's the power systems, navigation equipment or communications, or an IT system having a consequential impact on an OT system. But what is reassuring is that there is a trade-off from the safety-first, risk-led approach because it does uncover gaps in onboard security. This could include weak user access, lack or no network segregation through VLANs or weak system security, or even poor password hygiene. The result of the safety-first approach meets the requirements of the guidelines whilst also improving the cybersecurity of the owner and guests, but you didn't need a penetration test to do so. This event is supposed to be a cybersecurity update, and my message is less of an update with anything new, but affirming the safety-first approach that the vessels and their crew should be taking to prepare themselves for audit purposes this year, if it applies to them. What I would also ask is, regardless of compliance, either compulsory because you meet the criteria or voluntarily because despite not having to, you do so anyway, should these requirements be limited to just vessels that comply with the ISM code? During the Monaco Yacht Show, when all the yachts are at anchor, a sea of the most elegant and expensive assets on the planet, how many will have followed and implemented these cybersecurity guidelines? Just those that have to comply? Is that half, a third, or less? Do the vessels that don't comply and haven't implemented the maritime cyber risk management guidelines therefore pose a significant risk to you and your vessel at the next anchorage? What would happen if their OT systems were subject to a cyber event? Malicious or accidental, it's irrelevant. The cyber risks will remain until the entire industry does their part and puts cyber safety first. Thank you to the ISS for putting on a great event. I look forward to starting a discussion about cyber safety at the virtual table I'll be hosting after the Q&A.